everyone, and welcome back to the Assistant Room podcast. At whatever stage you are at in your career within the support industry, whether you are just starting out and are still finding your feet, or if you're more experienced and are juggling board meetings with demanding execs and a to-do list as long as your arm, I hope you are all well and having a great week. If we haven't met before, or if you're only just joining us, I'm Jess, founder of online PA lifestyle and membership platform, The Assistant Room. Throughout this podcast episode, Kirsi and I talk about absolutely everything, from the transferable skills that we all have as support professionals, what her biggest support has been throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and also how she anticipates as an industry we need to adapt our professional working relationships with those around us so that we can create longevity in our careers. But let's get cracking. So let's talk about you. So you've had the most amazing career. It's been super varied, lots of creative roles, all under the title of PA, EA. And you're now at Hewlett Packard Enterprise as an EA over there. And you also look after the UK and Ireland Assistance Network, or you lead the UK and Ireland Assistance Network. So tell me and everyone listening to this episode about your journey. Let's start with maybe acting school and then how you kind of progressed from there.
So I think I'm actually going to start a little bit earlier because I was thinking, when did I start working? And it was actually when I was 16 and I became a student council president at school. And that was obviously as a student, and we had 900 students within the school. And then there was a moment when the lady who was an actual adult and was supposed to guide us through our education, she went on maternity leave. And my headmaster turned around like, "Hey, you interested in having a job?" I was like, yeah, being on the same level with teachers and bossing everyone around.
Sounds cool.
Absolutely. Count me in. So that's basically what I did. And then until I graduated, so for 2 years, I was the head of the student council, and we did like crazy events. And I think that's where I also got into events. And the amazing thing about being young is you haven't really made that many mistakes. So having an idea of putting together a national fashion show and pulling everyone together and making this amazing platform for students was like, yeah, let's do it. And we did it. And now they're like, what was I thinking? But thank God I did, because it's like, yeah, go for it. But then once I graduated, I moved to UK and went to East 15 acting school for the first year, which was kind of like the prep year for it. And then after that, I discovered it's kind of time to probably pay some bills and eat some food and,
become an adult.
Job. Yeah, student loan is great, but not that great. So I applied for a job as a waitress in a restaurant. And I turned up and they actually interviewed me for a receptionist role. And honest to God, I had exactly the equal experience on both levels. I had never been a waitress and I had never been a receptionist, but I had the passion and they believed in me. And interestingly, the lady who was the head receptionist, she was also an actress. So that helped.
Oh, so you had that in common.
Absolutely. We had the same background. She felt really, we clicked really well, and it was a tough job, really. She was great, but the overall management, it was a very heavily hospitality where you need to be grateful that you have a job. So there, I stayed there for kind of on and off around about 5 years whilst I went to full-time, did my 3-year BA acting course at East 15. And then by that time I was living in Southend, because that's where our uni is based.
I live in Southend.
Yes.
The deepest, darkest parts of Essex.
Yeah, don't put the light on.
Yeah, we won't go down that road.
No. That's a different kind of podcast. So Essex University facilitates East 15 Acting School. But I also kept my part-time job, so most of the time I was finishing rehearsals, jumping on a train, traveling to London, 6 o'clock shift, finishing, getting back. It was full on and really, really. But once school was done, I went back like full time, and that's when I became head receptionist.
And where was that?
That was a Mintleaf Lounge. The original restaurant was the Mintleaf Haymarket, which actually doesn't exist anymore. And when I was there as a head receptionist, the assistant general manager, he had so much admin. And he had to kind of also run HR and recruitment. And that's where I started to really take on the PA duties and also events. And so there was a lot going on there. So on and off, I stayed there around about 5 years. But it was also kind of limitation that like, okay, it's time to move on. And I really realized I love that PA element. They're really getting to know the person. And I could see when he came, walked into the restaurant, I could already see like, okay, this is that kind of a day. And everything was filtered through me. And I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed this kind of semi-mind reading, like what's the day going to be? So I quit my job there and started looking for a full PA role. But changing from hospitality to corporate is very hard because, and I think it's just a territorial thing probably, because we all kind of want to protect on where we are, and we refuse to see all the transferable skills, because what a receptionist does in a restaurant, it's like full on, like everyone's diaries and everyone's moods and so on. So it's a quite good training really if you want to move to a PA role. So I kind of shopped around, and then I was contacted by a headhunter to kind of consider a role as a senior receptionist at this Mayfair Members Club. A club that you can't even Google because you won't find anything. And I was hooked. I was like, this is interesting. I know it's not what I exactly wanted, but this, there's potential there. And yeah, the moment I walked in there, it's called Alfred's. You can have a look. And I walked in there and I felt I love the people. I love the vibe. I feel like I can, even if I'm not doing exactly what I wanted to do, there's a good stepping stone from there. And it definitely was, because I went from senior receptionist to head receptionist to looking after membership, and then starting to also looking after the GM as a PA. So perfect place for really getting to know the dynamics and how people work. And our clientele was so high level that, anyone who walked in, you had to know them by name. You had to know everything was,
Sounds like a very organic way to build your career within the business as well.
Yeah. Also working with the other PAs from their side. So it was very, very good to see what struggles they have and how we were supporting them also as a reception team, because we were working together. So that was fantastic. But 2 years later, a lot of the management team in this case was moving on to Fortnum & Mason. And I love the place, but it's the people who make the place. So I made a decision that, okay, I'm going to move to Fortnum & Mason with them, just down the road, really. So a lot of us moved there, and then I dived into events. I did events there for almost a year. And again, it was like, we need this management team member needs that kind of assistance and that kind of help. So again, I kind of became this side PA with the other job. And I think it's a good reflection of how people see the PA role. It's like a side job, a hobby or something.
Oh, yeah, it's an add-on.
Yeah, you can do that. There's your real job, but do that too.
Which we all know is not the case.
Exactly, because it takes you, it takes you full time. And if you want to do it well, it's a job. So I did that for about a year, and then I got an offer to become event sales manager for a restaurant group. Just to clarify, I hate sales. Hate it. It's not my thing. But what it really intrigued me was that by that time, I didn't have much people management experience. I had maybe 3-4 people reporting to me across the years. But that opportunity, I could build a front of house team. I could look after the sales. I had marketing. So it seemed like an amazing opportunity to kind of really embrace the world and, see what I can do. Absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. Crushed my soul and sanity.
Oh
it was horrible. Basically, it was very much run by people who thought running a restaurant is a hobby. And they had no experience themselves. They just had the money. Your sales quota was very much set by right, so we did this much, now we're going to do this much, but what are the tools? How are we going to do it? We don't have more space. We can't raise
Sounds like you had a great time.
Honestly, it was horrific. But obviously, they weren't doing very well, and they decided to do this kind of a restructure of the management, and they were considering making people redundant, and I was like, I'm ready. That is the best thing. I can take time off. And by that time, I really needed time off from just everything. So I took the redundancy, and it was the first time after 10 years when I could have Christmas off. I wasn't working Christmas. It was magical. But it also kind of gave me time to really think about, okay, so I know what I kind of want to do, but now take time and actually sort out your head and, find your feet again. And 4 years before that happened, I had started my own acting agency because after I graduated, I thought it's great to do acting work myself, but I had good contacts. So I set up my own acting agency to represent other actors. And I had been already doing it for 4 years. I was like, okay, this is really something I like doing. It keeps me in the business. It also allows me to do acting on the side. And then I thought, well, great, I'm going to get this very basic, good, just an admin assistant job. Then I can do 3 jobs. It's going to be grand. Fantastic. So I took my 3 months off, was applying, and then I got approached by Manpower for a contractor job at Hewlett Packard Enterprise to support 2 quite high-level sales managers, but just an admin assistant job. It's easy peasy, no problem. I was like, perfect. Walk into the office, amazing people. I was like, I love it. I know the pay is not that good at that point, but, there's potential and I like it. I'm going to go with it. So 6 months into my cushy little job, which I thought was going to be, I ended up supporting the vice president of commercial sales and became an EA. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'm actually quite enjoying this. And I can see this is really good. Let's go with that one. And was also trying to always do the other things that I was doing. So I was a maternity cover for the EA for 9 months. And then after that, she came back and there was another role available for my current managers because his assistant was leaving and they were like, well, this is a great opportunity. And also then by that time I was turned permanent for HP. And then we started our partnership. And it's been 3 years. And during that time we also kind of set up the assistants network. Mm-hmm. And it's been great.
It sounds like a whirlwind.
It is, yeah. I think this last 4 years working for HPE has been, I want to say it's calm, but it's not because every day is completely different. And, I've literally moved from admin role to EA role with the responsibility to, lead the rest of the EA community. So it's very exciting. And I would always say that I don't really think about, I have to go to work. I was going, right, this is great. This is a journey. I'm loving it. So, that's kind of my career.
It sounds amazing. It's really interesting. And if you kind of look back at that entire time, what would you say has been your biggest challenge? And if anybody else is in this similar situation or in a similar situation and having that same challenge, what advice would you give to them to overcome that?
So I think the challenge has been to maintain your self-belief, especially when you're starting your career, because when it's your first job, people like to, I'm going to call it brainwash you, but they're going to make it sound, well, we are giving you an opportunity. This is fantastic for you. You're not going to get it. And that's why people stick around and really stay and suffer for a long time. And it is a tactic, especially with hospitality. It's definitely a tactic. So my advice would be, know what you want and stick with it and figure it out. And mostly be your own best friend. And by that, I really mean that we like to beat ourselves up about small little mistakes that, no one even probably remembers, but we will go over and over and over and drive ourselves mad. But you would not do that to your best friend. If your friend came for advice, you would listen to them. You would see both sides of the story. You would give advice. So be that best friend to yourself and really support yourself, because kind of helps you to keep your sanity, really.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I think in our professional lives, that's something that every single support professional really does. But if you think about little mistakes that you might make in your personal life, I mean, if you compare them, sometimes a mistake at work that you might go over and over and over and overthink and concentrate on too much has got the same amount of importance as you going to the supermarket and forgetting something at the supermarket. But you don't sit there on your sofa and think, oh my God, I didn't pick up the cream cheese for the cheesecake or something. You just go out and you correct the issue. But you don't sit there and stew on it, do you? But we do that all the time in our professional lives.
Especially when you have, going to probably the hot topic of challenging bosses, leave. No one's going to thank you for your suffering. especially not your friends and family and your own mental health. I think as a profession and as the, for the last 20, 30, 40 years, we like to, in a way, romanticize bad bosses and then kind of give them the ground to behave like that.
Yeah, it's permission, isn't it? We give them the permission because we allow
exactly.
it to happen without holding them accountable or pulling them up.
Exactly. And, don't do it. If whoever you're working for is going against your values and what you believe and what you want to do, if you're an EA or PA or an assistant of any kind, and your goal is to become, I don't know, chief of staff or EA to God knows who, if you're going to be staying with a person who does understand that, does not value what you can give, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
It's just go.
Yeah, because I think everyone would agree that, I personally think as a PA or an EA or a support professional, your job will be as miserable or as joyous depending on the person that you work for and depending on that relationship. And it doesn't mean that relationship and that bond happens overnight. You have to work for it. But I think that's why it's so important to go into your interviews and have a clear set structure about what you expect from that person, what you expect from that company, and to actually make an informed decision before you say yes to a job that it's actually where you want to be.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I love that advice. I think that's so, so, so important. Well, if we talk about on the subject of advice and your knowledge and your experience of being, an EA, you recently delivered an amazing masterclass exclusively for our members on mental health and how we can transition successfully after COVID, which is obviously something that everybody is thinking about right now. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, who you are, where you are in the world. Obviously, it's a completely hot topic for absolutely everybody. And in that masterclass, you spoke about how, as an industry, we need to adapt and change the way that we approach our professional relationships. What do you think the future of the support industry post-COVID looks like?
I think it's going to be a lot more professional. So there are two sides for it. It's obviously how we are continuing to communicate with management, HR, all of them. But it's also about how we as a community communicate. Because my worry is that we really need to think about how we approach when it comes to becoming the business partner or becoming a leader. We need to understand not everybody is a leader. They don't want to be a leader. And that's perfectly fine, because if everyone was a leader, we wouldn't have anyone to lead. And there are people who don't want to be a executive council, or they actually like doing quite a repetitive task, but they find enjoyment in that. And my worry with how we are as a communities are currently kind of advocating our new mindset is like, right, so we were nothing, but now we are this, and everyone's a leader, and
everyone's a strategic business partner.
And we're not. Like, it would be weird if we were. So my worry is that we really need to think about inclusion as a community. Imagine if you are the assistant who is actually happy doing, the kind of more of a traditional role. If you're being hammered by your peers constantly, like, you need to be this now and that, is going to really start to, impact your mental health and your stress. You're going to have a completely new strength. Like, am I not accepted even by this community? Where do I belong? Am I not good enough? And all of that. So I think what we need to think about when we're looking at future is creating an actual career plan. When you start in a restaurant, let's take it as, you don't rock up as a GM. You will start as a commie waiter, restaurant manager, and so on. We don't really have a kind of a much of a journey. You can technically become an EA in a small company within like half a year because, there's not much else going on. So we don't really have a set career steps and development for each step in this career. So I think the future is that, yes, it's great that we have found our voices. It's great that we're thinking about becoming business partners and taking our career to a different level. But we need to think about it in a bigger picture and have a more professional mindset towards our profession.
Yeah. If we talk about as well the idea that everybody doesn't need to think about becoming a strategic business partner, because that's, I think, a bit of a buzz phrase at the minute. Everyone's talking about that. That's on everybody's agenda. It's on all the newsletters with all the other networks. We've also got to take into consideration that your job as a support professional will be very much guided by the person that you work for. Not everybody does want a strategic business partner. Some people already have that. Some people already have those responsibilities allocated elsewhere in the business. And as you said, some people just need very basic support. And I've got friends, for example, who just like doing a 9 to 5. Yeah. They don't want to do emails after work. They don't want to do anything other than what they've been doing for the past 3 years, because that to them is very comfortable. They can have a nice work-life balance. They're not interrupted outside of work, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're confident with it because they're in the habit of doing it. Now, obviously, going forward, they might struggle if they're to move on to another business and struggle to adapt. But I suppose it goes back again to what you just said. It's about having that support depending on the kind of person that you are and depending on what you want. I mean, we've got extroverts, introverts, ambiverts. Everybody needs something different. Everybody learns in different ways. Everybody communicates in different ways. And you're right, we need to become a more inclusive industry to make sure that people aren't left behind. Because it's not just, now with COVID, it's not just not focusing on tech that will mean that you're left behind. It's the support around you in the community that you have. If you haven't got that, then that's going to be, I think, potentially even more damaging.
Yeah. Because then you're literally alone.
You're by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if you're a PA within a business that has 35 other PAs, if you feel isolated, it's a very, once you go down that dark hole, it's very difficult to get out of it. Well, let's continue talking about networks then and support and assistance, because as we've already said, you are the lead for the UK&I Assistance Network at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And I know that that's something you are super, super passionate about. And you've got a great number of PAs and EAs in the UK and also around the world. So how has creating that network and being part of that network, how has that been? And what advice would you give to anyone looking to create their own internal PA network?
My advice would be, if you don't have one, but you feel that a lot of people with a lot of opinion about things, it takes one person to start leading that. Be that person. Take the ownership of this. Because the truth is, if you want to make a difference, one person can definitely do it, but it's a lot easier to achieve anything in an organization if you are a united voice. Don't forget, we are fighting against a lot of perception of what we as a group do. I mean, you probably approach a lot of executives and go and say, we would like to have our network. They think that, they're just going to go for cocktails, aren't they?
That would be quite nice.
And you can do that, absolutely. But before you do that, write a business plan, write your mission statement, why you're doing it, and approach it as any other business opportunity, because that is probably one of your biggest tools of if you would like to get more training. If you have 20 or 40 or however many assistants in your company, do your research, find out what are other assistants looking for, present that data, talk to people in the language that they understand. So, if you approach HR, then talk to them probably about people development and career development, retention, and from that side, show that, this is just the statistics that can support your argument. If you're talking about getting budgets and investments, look at that, how much this, what is the comparison of other areas of the business where people are investing in, and calculate out the time that an assistant can save for an executive and how that adds value. Use your strategic mindset that we are, pretty damn good at. And, really use the right tools and think about your audience and go and deliver it, because it makes a difference. I think for us, it was very basic. The fact was that we have a lot of offices across UK and we had not met each other. We had a group of people who obviously were in the same office and the other office, but we had people in Manchester, Bristol, across the country who never met. We only saw their little Skype messages, and that was it. So for us to get the group together was very much us to start working together. Because once you have met the person, the way you approach them and the way you can even ask a favor or, whatever, it's so much easier when you have the personal relationship. So it was about building a community just with us firstly, and then starting to identify what we need help with. And obviously, as I'm sure many people can relate to, development and training was, again, something no one has really thought about it. But it's not that they're being mean and they're not thinking about it. No one has asked for it. And having a little, coffee room chat about how miserable your life is, obviously, we all need to do it at some point. But point a finger at yourself. What have you actually done to make a difference with that? And having this kind of group of people to support with the same idea, that is essential. And you can make a huge difference in your own career, how you message your thoughts, your career development. It's a great platform for changing the perception of the profession within your organization, because you suddenly become quite professional and organized.
Yeah.
Consistency is a very important thing. So we have quarterly, we used to have face-to-face, but now quarterly Zoom events to get together. We take the entire day, and that's what we do. We get external speakers. We have internal, depends on what's going on, what we need to cover when it comes to the internal side. We have monthly catch-up calls. We also have awards to get everyone engaged. It is important, and obviously make a business plan of that. The first year probably is about literally getting to know each other and, building the morale. But always plan the bigger picture and what you want to do and what you're going to build with it. And I'm not going to lie, it's not like everyone, if you're going to turn up and say, let's do a network, everyone's going to jump up. I'm like, of course, I'm in. I've always been waiting for it. No, people will fight back. People are scared of change. They don't know what that will bring. Have your support group, talk, engage. Transparency, incredibly important. That's kind of my view on network.
Yeah, and I think if there's going to be any good time to do this or create a network, right? Even if there's 4 of you in a business or if there's 400 of you in a business, now is the perfect time to do that. So we recently put out quite a lot of surveys and questionnaires to the Assistant Room Network to say, well, what's important to you at the minute? What is your focus? If we can support you in any way, what is that? And the 3 things were to help people grow their community so they felt like they were part of something, especially now because people have gone from, interacting with people on a daily basis to having absolutely no interaction unless it's over a computer. So it was grow your community, plan your future, or set goals and kind of put an action plan in place to try and achieve those goals so you have structure back into your life. And the other one was to develop your soft skills. And you could do all of that within a PA network.
Yeah.
And you don't have to only just do it internally, do you? If you have a group of friends who are also PAs, you can kind of organise that. Even if you don't work in the same business, you can organise that little group. And as PAs, we naturally get it more than other people. We understand what, say, for example, we go for dinner and one of our PA friends is late because they've had a bad day. They just have to look at us and we know exactly what is going on in their mind. And I think that's a really unique bond that we all share with each other because it is a very, very varied role. And as you said, there is a perception that we're trying to change with regards to what other people think that we do.
Yeah.
Networking at the minute, if you want to start one, now is the perfect time.
Absolutely, especially with all the changes and, you know, if you need funding or anything, going as an individual is a lot harder to get it. But if you've got 4 or 5 people interested, that's great. And also that gives the impression to the company leaders that, you are proactively seeking for development opportunities.
Yeah.
So, go for it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you've been doing during COVID-19 then, because I think everybody's had a different experience, haven't they? Everybody's been trying to kind of cope with this as best as they can in their own way. But what have you found has been your biggest source of positivity through COVID? And have you learned anything about yourself throughout 2020 that you didn't know before, considering 2020 pretty much has been us all shut away in our houses?
Yeah. So I think my biggest support has been my dog and my husband, but my dog. No, if I could have it differently, I would. But I would always say that one thing that probably has helped me through life in general is that I adapt quite quickly. And if there's a challenge, I think it's a self-defense. I immediately try to see an opportunity. So what I can do now. And what COVID has really taught me was living in present, because we like to plan, we like to think about the future, and we're kind of missing out what is here and now. And it kind of panics us if we can't think about the future. We feel lost. So with COVID, you don't know what's going to happen. You can't even plan your holiday or next week. So I really kind of took time to do the things that I have put aside for ages, the books I didn't read for God knows what reason and should have. I did some writing. I really started to kind of think about my life, but it wasn't in a depressive, reflective way. It was very much like, well, this is great. This is great material. And now this is what I can take further. So overall, I think resilience has been something that I started to understand more. And really, again, if you make a mistake, if you've had terrible luck at some point, this is all experience, and that really builds your resilience because it will make you stronger and helps you to cope with situations like that because it puts things into perspective. Also working offline, well, online, but not face-to-face with anyone or turning your cameras off and all, it has created a weird environment for many of us. And one of the things that I've kind of really, really tried to embed in my mind was that if you don't, the fact that you don't know context does not mean that there isn't any. So therefore, you have to talk more with people. Don't presume from a Zoom delayed reaction that they don't like something. Or
don't overthink things like we
absolutely.
said earlier. Yeah.
It's one of those office politics things that we really presume what people do. And now when we don't even have contact, the paranoia becomes a big friend for many. So take a step back, actually engage with people, talk with them. If you feel you don't really, like someone or you're getting a bad vibe, think about it as if I don't like someone, it's your job to get to know them better. And then will truly help you to kind of cope in this kind of bubble environment and burst these, theories that we can create in the solitude that we might have. So I've learned a lot, probably just everything is possible. You can do a lot with a laptop and, 4 walls. So it's been interesting.